The provisional agenda for this meeting is Security Council Resolution 1160, 1199, 1203, 1239, and 1244. The agenda is adopted. In accordance with the Rule 37 of the Council Provisional Rules of Procedure, I invite the representative of Serbia to participate in this meeting. It is so decided. On behalf of the Council, I welcome His Excellency Marko Đurić, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Serbia. In accordance with the Rule 39 of the Council Provisional Rules of Procedure, I invite Mr. Peter Dwey, Special Representative of the Secretary General and Head of the United Nations Interim Administration Mission in Kosovo, to participate in this meeting. It is so decided. In accordance with Rule 39 of the Council's Provisional Rules of Procedure, I invite Mr. Glauk Konjufca to participate in this meeting. It is so decided. In accordance with the Rule 39 of the Council's Provisional Rules of Procedure, I also invite His Excellency Mr. Stavros Lampedas, Head of the Delegation of the European Union to the United Nations, to participate in this meeting. It is so decided. The Security Council will now begin to its consideration of item 2 of the agenda. I now give the floor to Mr. Peter Dwey.
Thank you, Mr. President. It is an honor to brief the Security Council on Kosovo after having assumed my duties 3 months ago. I previously served in Pristina in 1999 and 2000, and in Belgrade from 2013 to 2015. I have returned to a region that has made remarkable progress through reforms, dialogue, and the efforts of a new generation determined to move beyond divisions. However, significant challenges remain. Mr. President, I arrived in early January at a moment of optimism that Kosovo could move forward after the political stalemate of 2025. The legislative elections held at the end of December were conducted in a peaceful and inclusive atmosphere. They reflected the broad participation of all communities. The swift constitution of the Assembly and the timely formation of a government pointed to a trajectory of stability and progress. That momentum, however, was tested during the process of electing a new president of Kosovo, which has not yet been completed. On 25 March, the Constitutional Court decided that the Assembly still had 34 days to elect a president. Let us hope that differences can be bridged, a new president can be elected, and that new legislative elections can be avoided. This would help ensure that the institutions remain focused on the broader public interest and people's needs. Mr. President, democratic processes often touch people's lives most directly at the local level. I commend the active participation of all communities in the municipal elections held in October and November, as well as the timely establishment of local government administrations across Kosovo. In northern Kosovo, the return of Kosovo Serb mayors marked an important step toward their re-engagement in local institutions. At the same time, this process has not been without challenges. In my recent meetings with some of these mayors, I heard concerns about incomplete handovers, administrative gaps, and language barriers. These are not merely technical issues, they directly affect the ability of municipalities to respond effectively to the needs of their communities. I welcome recent efforts to strengthen cooperation between central institutions and municipal leaders in the north, and I encourage continued dialogue. Questions have also arisen regarding the balance between municipal competencies and law enforcement responsibilities. Respect for the framework of local self-government remains essential to build trust and ensure effective governance. At the same time, positive steps are being taken, and I welcome efforts by the Kosovo police to revitalize community policing in northern Kosovo, which can contribute to strengthen trust and enhance public safety. Ensuring that police institutions reflect the diversity of the communities they serve, also at senior levels, remains equally important. Mr. President, from the outset, I have sought to establish an open and constructive working relationship with as many people and communities as possible, and, guided by Resolution 1244, to focus UNMIC's efforts on supporting dialogue and engagement, especially where the daily lives of people across communities are affected. I hope to have a regular and sustained dialogue with the authorities in both Belgrade and Pristina, despite their divergent views, including on the work of UNMIC. Mr. President, I welcome the recent progress in the EU-facilitated dialogue aimed at the normalization of relations between Belgrade and Pristina, and commend the European Union and its Special Representative, Mr. Peter Sørensen, for their engagement with the parties. The convening in Brussels of the Joint Commission on Missing Persons for the first time in a trilateral format in January marked an important step forward. I encourage the parties to sustain their engagement in close cooperation with the Working Group on Missing Persons. I also commend the EU and Belgrade and Pristina for identifying a constructive way forward to implement the law on foreigners in March. This should help ensure uninterrupted access to education and healthcare while contributing to an environment conducive to advancing dialogue, trust, and stability. These positive developments facilitated by the EU show that progress is possible through sustained engagement. It is important that Belgrade and Pristina build on this momentum, also by advancing the implementation of existing agreements, including the establishment of the Association Community of Serb-majority municipalities. I hope that a high-level meeting between President Vučić and Prime Minister Kurti can take place in the near future. Mr. President, dialogue, trust, and accountability remain the cornerstones of lasting peace and security in the region. I reiterate the call of the Secretary General for full cooperation by the authorities in Belgrade and Pristina to ensure that all those responsible for the attacks in Banska in 2023 and on the Ibar-Lepenac water canal in 2024 are held accountable. I urge both sides to work together through mutually agreed mechanisms in pursuit of justice. Mr. President, Kosovo has a dynamic civic space. This requires a media environment that safeguards the independence of journalists, free from political or other forms of pressure. We trust that attacks against journalists are promptly investigated and prosecuted. Strengthening accountability would also contribute to safeguarding media freedoms and preventing any erosion of the broader information space in Kosovo. Members of non-majority communities continue to raise concerns related to equality and non-discrimination, access to justice and basic services, and freedom of expression. Issues related to property rights remain particularly sensitive and require sustained attention. Full implementation of Kosovo's language laws is also central to promoting inclusion and social cohesion. Recent steps to strengthen the use of official languages in judicial proceedings are encouraging. I also welcome the recent advertisement of the post of Language Commissioner, which has been vacant for over a year. A timely appointment will help ensure that all communities can fully exercise their rights and effectively engage with institutions. Mr. President, trust among communities and between communities and institutions allows progress, dialogue, and cooperation to take root. Even in the face of financial constraints, building trust remains a priority of UNMIK. We pursue this hand in hand with the UN Kosovo team, as well as local and international partners, through targeted initiatives that bring communities together. The Barabara Center, a multi-ethnic space in the heart of Pristina, is one example. But I have also witnessed and been impressed by other projects, such as a mobile laboratory that brings STEM education to girls from communities in rural areas, or an initiative that brings together youth across Kosovo to explore cultural heritage and share experiences, or an award-winning documentary titled The Divided City of Mitrovica. Throughout its engagements, the mission aims to advance the meaningful participation of women and young people in political processes as part of a broader commitment to foster a culture of peace, where participation is inclusive, where voices are heard, and where every community sees itself reflected in the path forward. Mr. President, UNMIK is not immune to the financial crisis facing the organization. The mission has recently implemented a contingency plan reducing encumbered positions by almost 30%. Furthermore, in line with the recommendations of the civilian staffing review conducted in late 2025 and reflected in UNMIK's proposed budget for 26-27, the mission has adjusted its operations and will continue to pursue efficiencies with a view to maximizing available resources in support of mandate implementation. Finally, I am grateful to the members of the Council for the welcome you have extended to me and for your continued commitment to peace, stability, and cooperation in Kosovo. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank Mr. Dwey for his briefing. I give now the floor to His Excellency Mr. Marko Doric, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Serbia.
Esteemed President of the Security Council, distinguished members of the Security Council, esteemed Special Representative of the Secretary General, allow me at the outset to thank the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, as well as his Special Representative, Peter Dwey, for the report presented and for their continued engagement in the implementation of the UNMIK mandate in accordance with the Resolution 1244. The Republic of Serbia remains particularly grateful to all members of the mission. The presence of UNMIK continues to serve as a key guarantee of peace, stability, and the protection of fundamental human rights of Serbs in Kosovo and Metohija. At a time when calls are being made to reduce UNMIK's budget and alter its mandate, the Republic of Serbia sends a clear and unequivocal message. The presence and role of this mission should not be weakened, it should be strengthened. Let me be absolutely clear. In the current circumstances, UNMIK is not only relevant, it is indispensable. Its mandate, grounded in Resolution 1244, has not been fully implemented. This is not a technical matter. It is a matter that directly affects the safety, rights, and daily lives of people on the ground. The Republic of Serbia remains firmly committed to supporting such a role. Any discussion about its future must be guided strictly by realities on the ground, not by assumptions that may not correspond to the lived experience of communities. At a time of growing global uncertainty and multiple crises across different regions, it is particularly important that the Security Council remain anchored in facts, in law, and in a clear understanding of developments on the ground. In that context, UNMIK continues to play a stabilizing role not only through reporting, but also through its very presence. Its mandate under Resolution 1244 remains essential for ensuring impartial oversights, especially as unilateral actions risk undermining the frail balance achieved over the years. Distinguished colleagues, today I address you not only as a representative of the Republic of Serbia, but also as a voice for those who live their lives under fear, insecurity, and constant pressure in Kosovo and Metohija. The oppression of a community does not happen overnight. It unfolds in recognizable stages. And these stages can unfortunately be clearly observed in the position of Serbs in Kosovo and Metohija today. I stand before you today not to win an argument, but to contribute to solving a problem. And let me say this clearly from the outset. Serbia is not a part of the problem. We are a part of the solution. I also speak as a voice for those who feel intimidated, for the mothers and daughters of those wrongly detained, and for those who are labeled, marginalized, and pressured simply for who they are. What we are witnessing is not a series of isolated developments. It reflects a broader and deeply concerning pattern. And this is a question of principle. In many ways, this pattern carries troubling similarities to dynamics that preceded serious conflict in the past. These circumstances are not incidental or identical, but the trajectory should not be ignored. When rights are gradually eroded, when pressure becomes normalized, instability does not appear suddenly. It builds step by step, decision by decision. As Martin Luther King Jr. reminded us, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. This is why what we are discussing today is not only a national or regional issue. It is a matter that speaks directly to the capability of international norms, to the protection of human rights, and to the responsibility we all share in preventing instability before it escalates. The international community has invested decades in building mechanisms to protect minorities and uphold the rule of law in post-conflict settings. Allowing these mechanisms to be bypassed sets a dangerous precedent far beyond the Western Balkans. And I will speak briefly about these stages that are unfolding. First stage, identity becomes a reason to live in fear. We are witnessing a reality in which identity itself has become a source of insecurity. Under policies pursued by the government of Mr. Albin Kurti, Serbs in Kosovo and Metohija are increasingly marked as the other. Their identity is used as a basis to limit rights of Kosovo Serbs, restrict their movement, and target their homes, property, and religious sites. Arbitrary arrests, attacks, and administrative pressures are not isolated incidents. They form a systemic pattern of marginalization that we cannot and must not ignore. The United Nations was not created to remain silent in the face of injustice. Its role is to ensure respect for international law and to protect deprived of rights individuals and groups. For that very reason, what is happening in Kosovo and Metohija today is not merely a regional or national issue. It is, as I said, a matter of shared responsibility and the test of the credibility of the rules-based international order. The facts are deeply concerning. Since the beginning of this year, new arrests and attacks have continued. These developments point not to coincidence, but to a pattern of pressure and a climate of impunity. Serbs are facing restrictions on freedom of movement, arbitrary arrests, attacks on their property, and desecration of Christian religious sites. Attacks on the Christian Serbian Orthodox Church strike at the core of cultural and spiritual identity. Particularly concerning are the attempts to enter social, healthcare, and educational institutions, as they directly threaten the basic functioning necessary for the survival of a community. Restrictions of freedom of movement are systemic, not incidental. Mr. Milorad Arlov, a well-known humanitarian from Banja Luka, is only one of countless examples of individuals who have been denied entry into Kosovo and Metohija. Even the patriarch of the Serbian Christian Orthodox Church has been prevented from visiting the seat of his church last year. These are not mere administrative hurdles. They represent a deliberate signaling that certain identities are unwelcome or subject to conditional approval. This is not about procedure. This is about principle. These actions send a message that rights are conditional, that identity determines access, and that even humanitarian work and religious duty can be obstructed. In 2025 alone, 137 ethnically motivated incidents were recorded. Since then, arrests, intimidation, and attacks have continued, with reports of physical assaults, property damage, and verbal harassment persisting into 2026. We recall the shooting of Serbian boys in Štrpce on Orthodox Christmas, a deeply disturbing act that still resonates precisely because accountability remains unclear and insufficiently demonstrated. Such incidents erode not only individual safety, but the collective sense of belonging for entire communities. At the same time, a series of coordinated measures have affected the daily lives of Serbs. The unilateral ban on the Serbian dinar still persists, disrupting economic life and forcing pensioners, families, and small businesses into uncertainty as they struggle to access funds or conduct everyday transactions. Many elderly citizens still face long journeys to the administrative line simply to receive their pensions, turning what should be a routine matter into a source of hardship and humiliation. Systemic pressure on Serbian institutions in healthcare, education, and social services, leaving patients without reliable care and students uncertain about the continuity of their schooling in their mother tongue. Arrests that raise serious concerns regarding due process and proportionality. The seizure of land in the north of Kosovo for mono-ethnic special police bases, often conducted without transparency and outside agreed frameworks. These are not isolated decisions. They form a consistent pattern of pressure. To understand the full impact of these measures, one must look at how they affect everyday life. Economic restrictions translate into uncertainty for families and barriers for businesses. Parents worry about providing for their children. Teachers and doctors see their professional futures undermined. Institutional pressure affects access to healthcare, education, and social protection. Legal uncertainty creates fear and discourages return of those who were displaced. For many, this is not about politics. It is about whether they can live normally, raise their children, and remain in their homes. When basic conditions for a dignified life are eroded, people leave not out of choice, but out of necessity. This gradual demographic shift, driven by sustained pressure rather than voluntary migration, risks fundamentally altering the multi-ethnic character of Kosovo and Metohija. And this does not affect only Serbs. The Gorani community is facing increasing marginalization. The Bosniak community is being sidelined, with growing concerns about quiet assimilation. When multiple communities experience similar pressures, this becomes a structural issue that threatens the very fabric of coexistence. Once again, this is a question of principle. Over the past 6 months, the situation has deteriorated further. Instead of progress towards normalization, we are witnessing developments that deepen distrust and intensify insecurity. This raises a fundamental question. What kind of future can we expect in a society when people are targeted because of who they are and where justice is not present? Without accountability, there can be no trust. Without trust, there can be no stability. And without stability, we cannot achieve a lasting peace and stability. In this particularly concerning environment, the report makes no reference to the quiet but persistent exodus of Serbs. Within a very short period of time, according to sources, approximately 20% of Serbian population has left Kosovo and Metohija under pressure. This is not a statistic, it is an exodus, and it is our shared responsibility to stop it. Second stage is legal marginalization. The pressure we see today goes beyond physical threats. It is reinforced through policies and administrative decisions. Legislative initiatives, such as the draft law on foreigners, have caused deep concerns among Serbs in Kosovo and Metohija. There was a real risk that people who have lived and worked there for decades could be treated as foreigners, losing their rights to residence, work, and even to remain in their homes. Such measures are not only legally questionable, they reflect a broader pattern of attempting to reshape realities through administrative means. At the same time, Serbs are facing increasing legal and administrative obstacles that make everyday life more difficult, from access to public services to the exercise of fundamental rights. Previously reached agreements are not being respected. More than 13 years have passed since the signing of the first basic Brussels agreement, and it remains unimplemented. The key obligation undertaken by Pristina has not even come close to being fulfilled. The establishment of the community of Serb-majority municipalities has been delayed for nearly a decade and a half. This is not merely a matter of timing. It is a matter of credibility, trust, and respect for commitments that have been formally undertaken. Without the implementation of what has already been agreed, it is difficult to speak about genuine progress or sustainable normalization. In this way, Kosovo Serbs are left without legal framework that was guaranteed to them through the dialogue, undermining both trust and credibility of the process. There is also a deeper contradiction that must be addressed directly. Mr. Albin Kurti rose politically as a student activist, advocating rights and resisting what he described as oppression. Yet today, many on the ground experience his policies as restrictive, exclusionary, and increasingly heavy-handed. This transformation raises serious questions about consistency in application of democratic values. Leadership carries responsibility towards all communities, not only political supporters. When that responsibility is exercised selectively, institutions weaken and divisions deepen. We are also witnessing a recurring pattern. A crisis is created, we all invest time, energy, and diplomatic effort to contain it, and then when it is only partially reversed, we are expected to welcome that as progress. This is not genuine de-escalation. This is a cycle that consumes resources and erodes trust. This pattern has real consequences. Serbia remains fully committed to the Belgrade-Pristina dialogue. But I must say that as recent as yesterday, we saw another example when Mr. Albin Kurti visited the north of Kosovo, once again bypassing and ignoring democratically elected Serb representatives and mayors. This is not engagement, this is exclusion. And if we speak honestly about the EU-facilitated dialogue between Belgrade and Pristina, as I said, we remain fully committed, but without implementation of the existing obligations, it is not dialogue, it is stagnation. More than 13 years after the Brussels Agreement, we expect the community of Serb majority municipalities to be formed immediately. Without this community, the promised autonomy for the Serbs remains an unfulfilled promise, leaving Serbs without the institutional protections necessary for long-term security and prosperity. We must also recall the Washington Agreement from 2020, brokered under President Donald Trump. That approach was visionary. It placed economic cooperation at the center, offering a pragmatic path forward instead of confrontation. It offered connection instead of deadlock. It offered progress. That spirit should not be lost. Reviving elements of economic integration, freedom of movement, and practical cooperation could unlock tangible benefits for all communities. Third stage are attacks on culture, religion, and heritage. In addition to difficult security and living conditions, the Republic of Serbia must express particular concern regarding the continued targeting of Serbian cultural and religious heritage. The desecration of religious sites, Christian cemeteries, is not merely vandalism. It is a direct attack on identity, dignity, and fundamental human rights. Allow me to draw your attention to just one of many incidents: stoning of a bus transporting Christian Serbian pilgrims in southern Kosovska Mitrovica in September of 2025. This was not a random act. It was a targeted attack on individuals exercising their fundamental rights to freedom of religion. When such incidents are not adequately reflected, we risk losing a full and accurate understanding of the situation on the ground. Protecting these rights is essentially for reconciliation and confidence building. We are witnessing an accelerated process of militarization in Kosovo and Metohija. The strengthening of the so-called Kosovo security forces, accompanied by the acquisition of modern weapons, cannot be viewed as a neutral process, especially in this context of stagnating dialogue. It alters the security balance, increases uncertainty, and raises the risk of escalation. Such developments, especially when conducted without transparency and without full respect for international obligations, undermine efforts to maintain stability and call into question the credibility of existing security mechanisms. Let me therefore be clear. KFOR must remain the sole legitimate and credible security presence on the ground, fully in line with its mandate. At a time of growing global uncertainty and transformation of the international order, the frail stability in Kosovo and Metohija must not be put at risk. Combined with non-transparent cooperation with certain actors in the region, these developments raise serious concerns. Ladies and gentlemen, all these stages clearly illustrate the pattern of actions pursued by Pristina government. We are witnessing a deliberate approach in which crises are not accidental but created. Red lines are continuously pushed further by fueling tensions and igniting situations on the ground. And then those same crises are only partially de-escalated, just enough to present an appearance of restraint. But let us be clear, the red lines are never returned to their original positions. They are merely pulled back a few steps while new reality remains altered. How do we break this cycle? Firstly, by reaffirming the central role of the UN. For the Republic of Serbia, the UN remains the most relevant forum for ensuring justice and international order, side by supporting the EU-facilitated dialogue. Second, we must learn to look to the future. We must move beyond outdated divisions and focus on opportunities for cooperation. Serbs and Albanians are not destined to remain in conflict. They are both peoples who must find ways to work together. There is space, particularly in economic cooperation, to build trust and create a shared future. A future in which our region moves closer to the European Union, becomes part of a common market, and offers our people stability, opportunity, and dignity. Distinguished members of the Security Council, let me be very clear. Instead of insults and accusations, we extend a hand of cooperation to the Albanian people. We do not believe that our peoples are destined for conflict. We believe that through dialogue, economic cooperation, and mutual respect, a different future is possible. And once again, Serbia is not part of the problem. We are part of the solution. Serbia remains committed to peace. We remain committed to international law and to the full implementation of all agreements reached. The Republic of Serbia supports and will support UNMIC in its role in ensuring accountability and objective reporting, but sustainable normalization must be built through implementation, dialogue, and trusts. Serbia stands ready to work constructively with all partners towards a comprehensive, mutually acceptable, and lasting solution that respects the rights and security of all communities. And finally, let us be clear. Without responsibility, there can be no justice. Without justice, there can be no trust. And without trust, there can be no lasting peace. Thank you.
I thank His Excellency Mr. Dorish for his statement. I now give the floor to Mr. Konjufca. You have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. I took note of the report of SRSG, which provides a detailed summary of political developments in Kosovo, despite some controversial and biased elements that do not accurately reflect events on the ground. I will keep my remarks brief, as I understand that this Council has other, more urgent matters and crises to address. The Republic of Kosovo continues to thrive as a stable democracy with functioning institutions, consistent economic growth, professional police and security forces, and conforms to the highest standards of human rights and community rights, which are guaranteed by the Constitution, while demonstrating resilience against external challenges and ever-expanding global crises. Since our last debate, we held fair and democratic elections at both the local and national levels, once again showing that Kosovo has built democratic and independent institutions capable of maintaining stability and upholding liberal standards. The newly formed government will continue its ambitious reform program to make Kosovo more prosperous, secure, and integrated with the wider world. However, Belgrade has continued playing a disruptive role by attempting to interfere in elections and trying to impose the Belgrade-backed Serbian list on the local Serb community in Kosovo, aiming to mirror Serbian authoritarian and one-party rule. Thanks to our determination and our partners' support, we have successfully prevented such foreign interference and preserved the integrity of our democratic institutions. Mr. President, we are a peace-loving nation and have never interfered in other states' internal affairs. Despite Serbia's aggression and continuous hybrid threats against our institutions and society, Kosovo remains ready to normalize interstate and neighborly relations. However, the obstacle to peace and normalization of relations remains Serbia, which is neither interested in normalizing relations with Kosovo nor joining the EU. They are trying to deny our region the much-needed stability, prosperity, and full integration into the Euro-Atlantic structures. We call on Serbia to come to terms with reality and recognize Kosovo as a sovereign and independent state, and end holding its society and entire region hostage to aspirations of regaining regional hegemonism. While UNMIK's report accurately recognizes Kosovo's efforts to normalize relations with Serbia, it overlooks, however, the stabilizing effect of our constructive minority integration efforts in the north part of Kosovo. The effective functioning of a society relies on social cohesion and integration within a shared legal and political framework. This is a framework that many of you here in UN Security Council operate within when it comes to minority protection. Our efforts in north part of Kosovo to provide security and address threats are aimed at ensuring a safe and stable environment for all citizens of Kosovo, regardless of their ethnic background, so that our citizens can live in peace and free from pressure by Serbian illegal structures. It is in this spirit that we have undertaken measures to integrate and harmonize municipal health, education, and other public services in Serb-populated areas with those of the government of Kosovo. Mr. President, Kosovo has one of the most advanced minority protection frameworks in Europe. Our concerns remain, however, that Serbia and other maligned actors continue to weaponize minority rights and exploit the multi-ethnic character of Kosovo to promote division, disorder, and undermine our democratic institutions and peaceful coexistence. The report only briefly mentions the discovery of illegal weapons in this part of Kosovo, but does not adequately assess the constructive efforts and proportionate measures taken by the Kosovo police and our governmental institutions to preserve peace and normality in this part of the country. Similarly, the ANMIC report highlights several isolated and local incidents which are currently being investigated by Kosovo's professional police, but fails to mention Belgrade's hybrid threats to obstruct peace and hinder integration of the Serb community. In particular, the report insufficiently covers the case of the armed and terrorist attacks in Banjska in September 2023, which remains a great concern for us. The Republic of Kosovo, like the EU and NATO, has continuously called for the establishment of accountability over the past 3 years. Belgrade has ordered, trained, and now protects the main perpetrators of this terrorism and aggression, including Milan Radojcic, who at the time of the attacks was vice president of the Belgrade-backed Serbian list in Kosovo. We cannot trust Serbia, and we cannot expect to normalize relations without clear accountability and assurances of non-aggression. Equally, had the ANMIC report been more balanced and accurate, it would have reported on developments in the region, particularly Serbian authoritarian and destructive approach, which is evident through increased armament, military escalation rhetoric, disinformation campaign, and the administrative ethnic cleansing of Albanians in these 3 municipalities, in Preševa, in Bujanovac, and in Medveđa. Mr. President, despite these challenges, Kosovo was recognized last year, so in 2025, by other 4 United Nations members. And these are Kenya, Sudan, Syria, and Bahamas. And we look forward to establishing and strengthening diplomatic and political relations. We are grateful to all 121 United Nations member states that have formally recognized independence and statehood of the Republic of Kosovo. I call on the remaining UN member states without further delay to recognize Kosovo as an independent and sovereign state and open pathways for new friendships and cooperation for mutual benefit. The key to peace and stability in the Balkans remains recognition of Kosovo by all EU and NATO member states. Dear Presidents, regarding the rule of law and human rights, the ANMIC report, I think, does not sufficiently cover the Kosovo's government efforts to combat corruption and only briefly mentions our efforts to promote transitional justice and deliver justice to victims through war crimes trials. However, the inclusion of an extensive annex on the Kosovo Specialist Chambers and the Specialist Prosecutor's Office constitutes a mischaracterization of their legal nature and an overextension of unmixed reporting authority. The specialist chambers are not a creation of Resolution 1244. They were not established by the Council, do not derive authority from it, and do not fall within unmixed mandate. The specialist chambers were established through a constitutional amendment adopted by the Parliament of Kosovo. Their legal foundation derives from a bilateral exchange of letters between Kosovo and the European Union. They are a product of Kosovo's sovereign legal order, created through democratic legislative processes and supported through partnership with the European Union. The specialist chambers should report to the Parliament of Kosovo. Likewise, the presence of EULEX is based on agreements with Kosovan institutions and must be understood within that framework. Ongoing efforts to present Kosovo institutions within a status neutral or UN-derived framework are unacceptable. Mr. President, let me conclude by sharing our long-standing view, shared also by many Council members here, that unmixed mandate is completed and that United Nations resources and staff would be better used elsewhere to address other pressing crises and conflicts. Kosovo is now an independent, sovereign and democratic state that has achieved normalcy and functionality, a sufficient benchmark for UNMIK to exist. As demonstrated by our recent involvement with the Board of Peace, which was established by President Trump and other partners, Kosovo is ready to contribute to peace and stability also in other parts of the world, such as the International Stabilization Force for Gaza, which was mandated by this Council Resolution 2803 last November. The focus should not be on having the United Nations in Kosovo through UNMIK, but on admitting Kosovo into the United Nations. We believe that UNMIK should be transformed into an office that would facilitate Kosovo's full membership in the UN and its agencies, programs, and treaty bodies. This would be a more sustainable way to use United Nations sources rather than attempting to establish a role where none exists. I thank you all.
I thank Mr. Konjufca for his statement. I now give the floor to those council members who wish to make statement. I give the floor to the representative of Colombia.
Mr. President, I thank the Special Representative of the Secretary General and Head of the United Nations Interim Administration Mission in Kosovo, Mr. Peter Dwey, for his briefing. At the same time, we extend our greetings to the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Diaspora of Kosovo, Mr. Glauk Konjufca, to the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Serbia, Mr. Marko Đurić, and Ambassador Stavros Lambrinidis, Head of Delegation of the European Union to the United Nations, who also joins us today. Colombia welcomes the progress made in the formation of a new government in Kosovo following the recent elections, and we express our trust that, in light of the political developments in 2025, institutions will continue to be strengthened and to contribute to democratic stability in the country. In addition, Colombia welcomes the recent announcements on the civil registration and the implementation on the law of foreigners in Kosovo as an important step towards fulfilling the agreements reached under the framework of the European Union facilitated dialogue for mutual understanding. We recognize the efforts being undertaken by various stakeholders to ease tensions, strengthen trust, and promote the recognition and inclusion of all communities in Kosovo. Mr. President, UNMIC's ongoing work remains relevant in supporting these efforts, in coordination with other actors such as the European Union. The political dialogue must be supported by a sustained commitment on both sides, based on good faith and respect for the commitments made, in order to move towards stable and lasting solutions benefiting all communities residing in the region. In this context, we encourage continued creation of greater spaces for dialogue between the communities and civil society as tools to build trust and mutual understanding in coordination with relevant institutions, reflecting Kosovo's ethnic diversity as an essential asset for social cohesion and peaceful coexistence. We deem as positive the recent announcements on the search for missing persons. In particular, we stress the value of truth-seeking and preserving memory for crimes related to forced disappearances as a step towards reconciliation. This is a duty owed to the victims and also as a foundation to forge more inclusive societies aimed ultimately at building lasting peace. Mr. President, Colombia further welcomes the progress made in the implementation of the Women, Peace and Security Agenda, and we commend the efforts to promote women's full, equal, meaningful and safe participation in peace-building and social cohesion processes. Additionally, my country recognizes progress made in the Youth, Peace and Security Agenda, in particular the work to guarantee the active inclusion of young people in these processes. Here, we would encourage the authorities to continue incorporating broader and more meaningful participation from women and young people in the process, in line with the observations made by the Secretary-General in his most recent report. We hope that both agendas will continue to be strengthened through greater inclusion across the entire territory and through the continued safeguarding of rights and freedoms for the entire population. To conclude, Colombia underscores the need to build on the tangible progress made on the ground through fulfilling the commitments made in 2023 and by strengthening the institutions and the rule of law. This will be vital to ensure the right conditions to ease tensions, build trust between communities, and lay strong foundations for a lasting stability in the region. Thank you very much.
I thank the representative of Colombia for the statement. I give the floor to the representative of the United States.
Thank you, and thanks to also Special Representative Peter Dwey for his briefing today. The United States remains committed to supporting stability in Kosovo and Serbia. We, like each of you, know that this peace and stability matters for both countries and for the future of a more prosperous Western Balkans. We know and appreciate the fact that the people of Kosovo and the people of Serbia are our friends. They deserve a future defined by security, economic opportunity, and neighborly relations, not by political tension or recycled grievances. So our message to Minister Đurić and Minister Konjufca is simple. The only durable path forward is normalization. President Trump and the American people are listening carefully today for you to clearly commit to working and prospering together. We hope Prime Minister Kurti and President Vučić that both sides will lower the temperature, avoid escalation, and stay engaged at the table. The United States is committed to partnering closely with leaders that look to the future instead of to the past, with a genuine dialogue instead of theater. Colleagues, the American people also are watching to see what this body does with UNMIC. This council has a fundamental responsibility to those who fund it and those it deploys to ensure that missions are actively engaged in essential operations and that they remain faithful to the purposes for which they were created. On that test, UNMIC no longer measures up. UNMIC was created in 1999 under Security Council Resolution 1244 in the aftermath of conflict and displacement in Kosovo to provide an interim international civil presence and help stabilize a dangerous post-war environment. That was a different moment, a different mission, and a different Kosovo. That is not the reality on the ground today. There is no justification for treating Kosovo in 2026 as though it were still the Kosovo of 1999. Today, KFOR helps maintain security in the region. ULEX and the OSCE work to uphold rule of law and strengthen Kosovo's institutions. The EU Special Representative, Mr. Peter Sorensen, leads on the Pristina and Belgrade dialogue. UNMIC no longer plays a meaningful governance, military, or mediation role. It is not addressing an active peacekeeping crisis. It is not a security guarantor on the ground, and it is not advancing normalization. Many of the functions it still retains on paper are better handled by other organizations. Yet this mission remains. Why? In a world of real crises needing our attention, from Ukraine to Iran, Haiti, and Sudan, the American people, and frankly all those who fund this mission, are right to ask a simple question: what exactly are we still paying for? UNMIC today has a civilian footprint of roughly 300 personnel and only 8 total military officers. In a phrase, it's an overstaffed, overfunded peacekeeping mission without peacekeepers. We welcome the Secretary General's proposed reductions to UNMIC's budget for the upcoming peacekeeping financial year. They are a step in the right direction, but they don't go far enough. That's just an 8.6% reduction, which totals about $4 million in savings. Modest trims are not the same as real reform. Until this council reaches agreement to close UNMIC, the mission should be streamlined further, its staffing reduced further, and its residual functions formally transferred to institutions and entities which are not only better suited to carry them out, but which are already doing so. When a mission has fulfilled its purpose, its mandate should end. What a concept. In fact, one of the clearest signs of dysfunction in the UN system is that we are too often unable to act when the moment calls for it, when success calls for it. A mission that never ends is not a success story, it is a warning sign. The Security Council should not measure effectiveness by how long a mission survives. It should measure effectiveness by whether peace has become durable, institutions capable, and that the mission is no longer needed. In Kosovo, the answer is clear. the conditions on the ground, the capabilities of local institutions, and the stable presence of other actors, especially those from the EU, all point in the same direction. UNMIK has reached the end of the road. And if this council is serious about credibility, discipline, and reform, then we should act like it. Thank you.
I thank the representative of the United States for the statement. I give the floor to the representative of the Democratic Republic of the Congo.
Monsieur le Président.
Madam President, the Democratic Republic of the Congo welcomes the holding of this meeting dedicated to the situation in Kosovo. We welcome the presence here with us of the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Serbia, His Excellency Mr. Marko Đurić, and we thank Mr. Peter Dwey, Special Representative of the Secretary General and Head of the United Nations Interim Administration Mission in Kosovo, for his briefing. We also welcome the presence of the representative of the European Union. The Democratic Republic of the Congo would like to commend the ongoing efforts of the United Nations Interim Administration Mission in Kosovo, whose work remains an important factor in facilitating dialogue, strengthening trust between the parties, and contributing to a more stable environment. My delegation reaffirms its attachment to the principles of the Charter of the United Nations, in particular respect for the sovereignty and territorial integrity of states, which remains the foundation of the international order as enshrined and defined in the context of Kosovo by Security Council Resolution 1244. This resolution constitutes the legal framework of reference for the Council's consideration of this issue and the basis of the United Nations engagement in pursuit of a lasting settlement grounded in dialogue and respect for international law. Mr. President, recent developments described in the Secretary General's report reflect a mixed reality. While the security situation remains generally calm, it nevertheless continues to be fragile in a context marked by persistent political uncertainty and localized tensions. This situation underscores the need to strengthen the predictability as well as the stability of the political framework,